shall not leave these prisoning hills, though they topple their barren heads, level earth, and the forests slide uprooted out of the sky. Though the waters of Troublesome, of Trace Fork, of Sand Lake rise in a sick body to glean the valleys, to drown lush pennyroyal, to unravel rail fences, though the sunball breaks the ridges into dust and burns its strength into the blistered rock, I cannot leave. I cannot go away. Being of these hills, being one with the fox stealing into the shadows, one with the newborn folk, the lumbering ox drawing green beech logs to mill, one with distant feet of man climbing and descending, and one with death rising to bloom again, I cannot go. Being of these hills, I cannot pass beyond.
Congressman Carl D. Perkins died August 3, 1984, on the way back to his district. His body was displayed at the high school gymnasium in Hunman, Kentucky. A national press and a national constituency heralded his passing with praise and historical perspective, while people at home who knew Carl differently, maybe better, came forward to see him last time. This program is about that coming forward.
Carl's daddy invited me. Now, anytime you're in Hindman, and if they were not, you come up to my house, and if I'm not there, you take your horse down the barn, and Carl will take care of it. And Carl was, about that tall. And every now and then I would go with Carl down to the barn, and Carl would feed my horse. And then he had a bull there. He had this big long trough. He had this big long knife, about that long, and he'd cut pumpkins and cushaws and right fine and feed that bull. That was the beginning now of knowing Carl Perkins. But since that, we've been political buddies. I'd say we're the best friends any two people ever in Knott County to not be any kin.
We always had to get up when I was growing up, eat breakfast with Carl Perkins when he was in Hazard at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't really care or know who Perkins was, and I didn't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But he was always gracious and generous to us, and a great friend of my father. That's my first impression. But I used to raise cane. I said, why not do that? He said, but it's Congressman Perkins. But he's come to be, the greatest we'd ever had with the area.
Bill, he says, come and go with me. I said, okay, where are we going? I thought we'd be going through one of the halls of Congress and everything. He reached down under his desk, he took his shoes off, put on a pair of work shoes. He put them on, and we walked about a half a mile down to the corner to the laundry to take his laundry. But he was a great guy, and he was a great mountaineer. We loved him, and that's coming from a Republican.
When Lyndon Johnson was president and visited Eastern Kentucky, and I probably was the least equipped and as least prepared as anybody to be there covering a presidential visit back in the crowd. Carl Perkins from the platform spotted me, walked through the Secret Service, brought me through the barriers onto the platform, introduced me to President Lyndon Johnson. I got an interview with Lyndon Johnson and found a seat for me on the platform, and I would say I would remember that for the rest of my life.
All of a sudden one day this guy come in with a bulldozer, and he come on what I believe was that guy's name was Herbie Messer. And he pulled this dozer up in his bottom, and he starts tearing the fence down, and the Messer guy comes out with his gun. He propped it over the fence. He said, you get down off that dozer, you own my land. I went over there, they called a special meeting one night. The people was all there, and they all had guns, and Carl Perkins got up front, and he said, let's calm down now. He said, want things to come to order. He always whistled. That was his characteristic. So he got up there, and he started speaking to him. He started whistling. He said, now, we should do things in an orderly manner, and we should let the law handle things, I think. They're not going to tear your graveyards down. They're not going to strip your land, and they're not going to come in and move you off.
I tell you, I want this to be sure. He's the most wonderful man that I've ever met in my life. He met me with a smile and with his arms around me. And he said, the reason I liked you, your grandmother was from my county. That's the reason he said that. He'd always kid me. He said, I see my old Kent folks. He'd get me about that.
I was trying to get a veteran's check, and I tried for 6 months without any success, and he had it within 10 days. I had my money in 10 days. But it was just the money. He just, anything you wrote to him about, he always answered. He never failed to answer.
In the book of beginnings, the 6th chapter of Genesis, we read that there were giants on the earth in those days. In future generations, congressional historians will record that this unpretentious country lawyer from the hill of Kentucky was a giant in our days. For 35 years, that lumbering gait, that sided smile, that big hand upon your arm, that slightly lisping drawl from the mountain country, that gentle perseverance that was Carl Perkins, were hallmarks of the legislative halls. No man has done more for those who need his help than Carl Perkins did in his 40 years and more of public service. Black lung program, the hospitals, the libraries, the vocational schools that nest in among these hills. His dedication to nutrition, feeding the hungry and clothing the naked, educating the illiterate. His devotion to jobs, school lunches, all these and more flowed from the fluid pen and the fertile mind of Carl D. Perkins. Generations of Americans, unborn, who may never know his name, will be the beneficiaries of his deeds and will have cause to bless his memory. And as loving hands today lay him to his final rest, we are drawn to that scripture which says, "Come, ye blessed of my Father, and enter in kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me to eat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me to drink. I was naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick and in prison, and ye came unto me. And then shall the righteous answer told and say, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed thee, or saw thee thirst and gave thee drink? Or when saw we thee naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick and in prison, came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, done it unto me." So Carl, old friend, your race is run, your day is done, your battle won, and from the eternal skies we know you hear the words, "Well done."
He had the largest hand I ever shook, with the possible exception of Ken Reisner down on Auburn. And I'll say, metaphorically speaking, he had the biggest heart that I know anything about. Hunter Wamberger told me about Carl when he first ran. He said Carl Perkins arrived at his farm on a little yellow horse, and he said if I'd been at the top of the mountain, he'd come to me. And so he came and he grabbed my hoe, and he started hoeing. And he didn't just hoe around a few hills and quit, but he hoed to the end row and then came back, all the way back. Well, he didn't win that election, but that was the last one he lost.
This is Herman Fields, the only commissioner ever elected in Republican in the county. So he must have been pretty good.
Well, that's what brings me here. He was a good supporter of the union.
That's right.
He was also responsible for the enactment of black lung legislation, in which I am totally disabled from coal mining. That's what brings me here.
Yeah.
It's what he has done for the common people, the poor class of people.
Carl and I started in politics at the same time. He run in 48, was elected, and I run in 49. He stayed there till he died. And
Carl and I were just talking about the appropriation. All the money that's been pumped into Eastern Kentucky maybe didn't go for what it was really earmarked for. But it's been pumped in here through his efforts.
He always would come by and see it. He would, that was his earmark. He was just a common man, and he hadn't forgot where he came from. Is that right, Herman?
Yeah, he spoke to Poor Man's English.
Right.
I think they had a nice crowd here. I do appreciate Washington to turn out like it did in my first-hand view.
Yeah, Washington, they did come. They showed their respect.
More than 100 strong members of the Congress of the United States who traveled by bus and plane, helicopter to be here today to pay homage to a great colleague and a great friend, Mrs. Perkins and Chris, the neighbors and the friends of Carl Perkins. Carl was a liberal, cloudy, cold a liberal. He believed in caring and a compassionate government. Carl Perkins was a tall man, an effervescent smile, a friendly manner about him, a quiet demeanor. He had a will of iron and a steadfast determination to achieve the goals, the betterment of the life of the average American. He had a vision of this country as a place where none were left behind because they lacked education or food or decent wage. As I'd walk by, his strong hand would go out and grab me by the arm and he'd say, 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker. This is legislation we must pass. Oh, what a fighter for the rights of people he was. Carl, we'll miss you, all of you, the members of the Congress of the United States. You've been a legend. What a mark you have left. May you forever be in the hands of God.
When the Reagan administration tried to declare ketchup a vegetable, well, Mr. Perkins and through Tony Hall and Mr. Miller held hearings on this and exploded this particular issue because what they really wanted to do was to reduce the amount of food on a child's plate. And Mr. Perkins, by holding hearings and making it public, prevented that from happening.
And the sense of loss that we feel and the understanding that it's going to take some time to find that kind of person again is something that just fills me with great sadness. But I'm joyful in having known him, having worked with him, and sad to see him go.
The Black Lung Program is probably the most thought of, well thought of for Eastern Kentucky, Kentucky in general, of any labor act passed by the United States Congress to help disabled miners in a great way.
If you look at our schools and the water system, our vocational school, Carl Perkins made that possible here. I don't know of anyone now in Eastern Kentucky that can fill that man's shoes. We'll have to fill the vacancy, but we're not going to fill that man's shoes. He was a personal friend of all of us.
I've been a member of Congress now for 30 years and 8 months. And every day of that tenure of time, Carl Perkins and I have been close personal friends. When first elected to the Committee on Education and Labor, he served at that time with 2 men who later became President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, along with Richard Nixon. From time to time, John Kennedy, in making his race for the Senate, had to be away and was unable to attend committee meetings. Before he'd leave, he'd call Carl Perkins and he'd say, Carl, you have my proxy in your pocket. When you cast your vote, you cast mine. John Kennedy loved Carl Perkins, and he trusted him. He knew him, just like all of us did.
He was good to everybody. He was little enough for the smallest ones and big enough for the big ones. He knew an old fella that had a big orange grove. He's about 90 years old. He goes up to see him, he gives him a bunch of oranges to take home with him. And he had two toast sacks full, feed sacks. And we take him back to the airport. The tenant there said, well, he's trying to check it, Well, he said, there's no way you can put them on now without being tied. He said, the oranges get spilled out and the luggage will be destroyed. And so he told Mr. Fredericks, he said, go back out in the car and get a string or a rope or something to tie his bags. And he went back out and stayed a while, and he come back, he said, I can't find a thing out. There's not a thing out there that I can find to tie him with. He says, I don't know what you're going to do. And he says, I figured he just took his strings out of his shoes and tied them. Tied them, put them on, and took it away. He just couldn't outdo him. He was the best I ever seen.
I had an appointment with him for 7 o'clock in the morning, which I thought was a little unusual for going to see a congressman in Washington, but I walked in. Nobody was in the office. I kept walking. I finally got to his office, and he was in there in his brown suit, his white socks, his feet up on the desk, reading a hometown newspaper and catching up on hometown news.
He came to the office, and in turn we went to the Capitol building. We walked up the hill to the Capitol, and there we had a large picture made with the whole group of Congressman Perkins. This is my two children, Chris and Curry Bailey. And that's me and Senator Wendell Ford, Don Bailey and Senator Wendell Ford. There's Congressman Perkins and I on the Capitol steps in Washington. He was ready to go back into the Capitol building. It's a group from lady from Johnson County also went with us. Boy on the bus there. There's a picture made out in front of the White House just immediately after we had a meeting with Senator Ford. That's behind the Senate building there. We had a good time. Glad we had the picture made.
The historical perspective of America, of the founding fathers, of our ability to worship and teach religion in this country, and for our young people to share it in the public schools of the country, and his passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. He's crowning glory, and I think he really will be remembered best for it in time.
John, come ahead. I'm not going to make a speech. I used to like to travel by helicopter, and I thought, 8 or 10 stops would be a good day. With Carl, we made 14 stops, and even at 11 o'clock at night, we stopped down over at Russell County at a football game. So he had boundless energy, and almost every weekend he'd drive the old 72 Chevrolet or whatever it was to come down. He loved the people in the mountains, and he was, I think, Appalachia's #1 spokesman.
He was a very unassuming man, and he was a person who remembered his roots here in Eastern Kentucky. I happened to marry a man from Hazard. Bill Collins is from Perry County, and they're special kinds of people. I just hope that we can carry on his name and let other people know him as we knew him, because if not, they've missed a great deal not knowing Carl Perkins.
Carl Perkins was a man who believed in serving the people. He had a love for the people of Eastern Kentucky and a love for the people of America. Rich, powerful, many individuals do not really need champions today. A warrior for the common man, a warrior for the poor, is rare indeed. It is a great honor that you have shown my father by coming today. The family, again, very much appreciates it. But as a lasting remark, let me say this, what my father would wish, that the dream of equality, of good for all men, regardless of social status, be carried forward. With that, my father will still be with us.
I am a poor, wayfaring white land to which I go. I'm going there to see my father. I'm going there no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I know dark clouds may gather round me. I know my way is rough and steep, yet beauteous fields lie just before me, where God's redeemed the vigils keep.
Just give me a second to think about it. I first met Carl Perkins up in the House of Representatives when my wife Lois was working up there, and I've known him for many years since then, and my best recollection of Carl is just a person who cared about people and is dedicated. I don't think there's any representative that's worked harder for his people over a period of 40 years than Carl Perkins. And after it's all said and done, caring and hard work is what it's all about.
He had no hobby to speak of. The only dedication he had was to the job. And he worked most around the clock, took practically no vacation. Had no bad habits, really. Didn't like to drink whiskey. It made him sick. Oh, I'd take a drink of whiskey or two, and he would take one. If he took 2 drinks of whiskey, he'd get sick. And so he didn't drink. He drank buttermilk, which I guess helped him a hell of a lot more than the whiskey helped me. But anyway, he had no bad habits that I know of. And so he just dedicated his life to his job, and of course became very effective and has a tremendous amount of good for this country. He was unique. We really lost a great friend and a great man for Eastern Indiana. Most of what they said in there today, maybe all of it was true, and I think I know it.
Today we say farewell to one of the few true giants among the men and women who have shaped the destiny of America. Carl Perkins was our friend, but even more. He was the friend of tens of millions who never met him, who did not perhaps even know the name of his committee, but who could see the results of his work in their lives. My brother Robert Kennedy, who also had a special feeling for Carl Perkins, often spoke with admiration of individuals who see things that never were and say, why not? There never was true opportunity in education for those who were unequal and unprivileged until Carl Perkins said, why not? There never was a full chance for the health of children and mothers and families without wealth in Appalachia until Carl Perkins said, why not? There was no Medicare. There was too little food for the hungry, too little concern for the aged, too little learning in the schools, too little hope for those whose lungs were blighted in the mines, till Carl Perkins said, why not? And now he has gone home to the place and the God in whom he so deeply believed.
Indeed, in the fullness of our faith, we think of Carl, of his decency and goodness, and we say of this, his last pilgrimage, why not? For he is there now with so many who shared his dreams and visions and struggles, with the young president to whom he rallied early in the 1960 campaign, and with whom he stood every step of the way during those thousand days, striving for a new frontier, for social justice and for peace. They are together now, and now, like others before them, they both belong to the ages. Many leave behind words. Carl Perkins have left us deeds to guide our way. His example is an ideal that will not die, of compassion, of a homespun wisdom that was at once persuasive and penetrating, of a passion leavened by humor and lighted by a wonderful sense of perspective. The Congress will not be the same without him. The country is better and truer because of him. And if we're here and could raise his gavel now and interrupt this service, I think I know what he would say. Don't forget to keep on fighting. And this is how our homage to Carl Perkins. We will remember those who were in his heart, all those who were so frequently helpless and forgotten. We will not neglect them. We will remember you, Carl, for your causes, your hopes, and the country you loved, for the America to which you gave through all your life. We will keep on fighting. God bless you, Carl. Goodbye, friend.